Welcome to Becoming More, the podcast where we learn from others on how they became more so you can actually be like them. Do what they do, have what they have, and give what they give. And today we have a great person. I have been so excited about this podcast. Now, if you want to just have a great inspiration, if you want encouragement, if you want to have some laughs, well, today you're going to want to actually listen in to Trevor. Trevor is someone that I met at Austin Speakers Association. I was speaking that day, and of course, with him being a great speaker, he offered some guidance, correction, some coaching. I love the feedback that you gave to me, Trevor. It was priceless.
Thank you.
It was so much fun. Now, you're Australian born, and yet now you're moving to Canada. You've been with us in the US for a while. Do you just go around the globe, just moving from place to place?
I think so, Dianna. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I started moving when I was young. I left home at 17, went to college, spent 1 year there, moved to Melbourne, big city, back to my college town, back to Melbourne, to another town in the bush for a year or so, and worked for a large company back. And I lived I think in 6 months, I lived in 12 different locations.
Oh,
So
my
I
word.
had some kind of bug apparently. And then I got an opportunity to go to Chicago for 4 months. And I went to Chicago for 4 months. And the moment I got back, I was so enamored of America and the US. In fact, I had such a strong Australian accent that the only answer I ever got when I opened up my mouth was, "What?" And so it gave me an opportunity to explain who I was. I loved being there. I thought Chicago was a big version of Melbourne. And I ended up in Melbourne saying, I'm leaving, I'm going back to Chicago. And I got a job offer and ended up in Chicago, lived there for 38 years. But Chicago, Fort Worth, Austin, and Long Island. I lived on Long Island for 12 years. So I moved around, yes. However, I sort of feel settled in each of those places. What's the most difficult part for some people is finding new people, new relationships, new settings, new groups. And I've never had that problem ever. And in fact, we moved here in August last year to Canada, north of Toronto. And I'm involved in the Toronto chapter of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And having been involved in Austin, they said, "Oh, you should join our leadership team." And I said, "No way." And I'm now on the leadership team, and
Of
I'm
course
getting
you
to know, yeah, and I'm getting to know people and work with people and help people. I've already contributed a video on stagecraft to the Canadian Association. Right after this podcast, I'm actually involved in being a student in the business starter track, understanding Canadian business for speakers. And so I've got as much involved as I can. I run a community on Slidecraft. We meet once a month. So getting involved isn't an issue, and getting to know people. Yesterday or Sunday at the hackathon, the AI hackathon, I met amazing people, and we've already got a WhatsApp group for the people who were the judges. So
Oh,
it's very simple for me. I'm very shy, as you can tell, but I do tend to find people of similar ilk and desires and passions. And, generally I can make friends pretty easily. So it's a little bit different here. We're in the country. It's about 30,000 people in this town. Don't know too many people at all. Really haven't spent a lot of time in the winter out of the house.
yeah.
So we're sort of finding our way, but enjoying it tremendously.
Well, and I watched you in Austin. Yes, you knew everybody, even though people were brand new. They just gravitate to you. And you describe yourself as a former street performer and a computer weenie, yet you end up at the AI hackathon. Now, come on, you're not invited to that by being a computer weenie. So, how do those two very different words shape the storyteller that you are today?
Um, it comes from, so one of the stories I told in Austin at a Testify group, which is an incredible storytelling event that happens every month. And I told a story about how the bullies made me. And when I was in primary school, I had bullies. And the fascinating story is that at the end of it, somebody came up and said, well, your headmaster seemed to be the biggest bully of them all. So I think being bullied, I learned defense. And defense was to be a little silly at play and fun. And I used to entertain my cousins for hours and hours and hours. And so when I first moved to Austin many years ago, I spent 3 years in Austin on a contract. I found improv and I started being involved in the writing community, the poetry community, and the acting community. I did film acting classes, and I discovered, and then somebody said, Trevor, you're an idiot. You should audition for the Renaissance Festival, which is street theater. And I did, and I got a part, and I did that for 6 years
Oh, my
at two
word.
different places. And that was an expression of me being able to entertain people. In improv, I learned that if you can make people laugh, if people are laughing at you, it's not a bad thing because you are entertaining them. And I was able to do that by putting on a costume. And then when I moved out of that and to the next stage, I was doing motivational speaking. And that's where I'm able to leverage that way back from the being silly as a defense mechanism all the way through my life through improv and street theater. And it's so much fun to be on stage and have to handle things using your improv skills. One time my computer went dead, the screen went dead, the lights went off, and I still continued because I knew my stuff and I had improv. And somebody said later, we've never seen anybody do that. They had to stop the whole. It's like, no, you paid me to be here to do this job. I'm going to keep doing it. So the skills have come in very, very handy. And at the same time, that little bit of silliness and play adds value because it's not in any way threatening or being told. It's not a parent-child relationship. It's a teacher-student for that moment where we get to work together on whatever the concept is.
Well, you've got a sense of humor. I mean, your book, Never Iron When You're Naked. I mean, come on. Who even came up with that title? I've got to know. Did you do that yourself or did someone give
So
it to you?
I started after I was in Austin for a while and I came back to technology and I had this story to tell. I created a session, motivational session called Get a Life. And everybody wanted a handout because there were techies and it was at tech conferences. Give me a handout. And I said, no. And I wrote the book. And the book was a whole bunch of one-pages stories that I was telling in my Get a Life. And then I obviously grew more. And one of them was there were several different ideas, but the Never Iron When You Were Naked, there's a story behind it. And this is the most important. It was just the one that gets you. Like somebody said, why didn't you use nude? And I said, well, nude is for art and naked is for in your face. And so it became the thing. And it's the absolute perfect title for the book. And there's little things in there that people don't understand. Like I say to people, what's your favorite page? And there's no page numbers, so they can't tell me the page number. They have to tell me the story. So it's just been a very fascinating experience to have a book titled that. I won an independent publishers award called the IPPY Awards, and I won a bronze medal in the self-help category. And the same year, there was a book called Never Fry Bacon in the Nude, and we both won a bronze medal. And mine was all the advice your mother should have given you but never did. And her book was all the advice my mother gave me about dating. So it ended up just being perfect at the right time. So
Well, literally, I think it's a mix of practical life tips. It's personal anecdotes. I like the personal growth part. I mean, you're a lot about personal growth. You're involved in a lot of different activities. Plus, you give back. That's what I love about you. Talk to me
It's
about where did that start?
um, I think it was funny because when I was younger and in primary school, I used to take the less privileged kids under
Mm-hmm.
my wing when we would have sports days. And my sister said, "You're going to grow up and marry someone foreign," because she always saw me working with people who were not the standard people that you should
Yeah.
involve with. And I guess my mother was always very codependent and giving. And, I have that curse because I'm a man, I have to solve problems. And because I had a mother who's codependent, I have to solve problems. And I see things in the world. And to me, if I can help, if I have the skills or the ability or the resources to help, then what happens is I enjoy being able to help and lift somebody, lift them up. And that to me is a passion of mine. So being able to do that has sort of gone to my speaking, where my mission is to make a difference in the world that's my sphere of influence by guiding people to make their difference. And speaking is a wonderful way to do that. It's the responsibility is not after you've left. The responsibility is beforehand, that you have the right messages and the right stories. And having spoken and done this for a long time, I've honed what are the right messages? What are the things I should be saying? Because as a speaker, and you know this, you'll say something and it doesn't sit. And you learn from that and then you grow from that. And so I think with my speaking, with my experience, I've been able to find the messages that resonate, that truly help people.
Mhm.
And that feeds my mission, my soul. And if I can do that for anybody without them knowing it was me, there's more joy in that, to sit and watch somebody grow or learn because of something you've done, but to see the positive impact that they've had. And then for them to take that and go somewhere else, the butterfly effect, the ripple effect, I should say, that is so joyful to me. So it's sort of part of my psyche. It's part of my growing up and my history. And, I'm so honored that I'm able to do that on a stage.
Well, not only on the stage, I've seen you do that in person. You actually are able to help people shift their perspective. And you do that in your book as well, just looking at a different way to actually be happy. Do you ever have down days? Because you seem to be happy all the time.
um, I have no comment. um, so it's very fascinating because a few years ago, a friend said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? And I surprised them because I said 10, because I don't think happiness is a linear or measurable thing.
Yeah.
So, from a happiness perspective, I would say I'm very happy with where I'm at in life, with what I'm doing, the things I have, the relationships I have. I'm very happy with that. And happiness for me is not something that is measured on a day-to-day basis. On any given day, I may feel overwhelmed, I may feel stressed,
Mhm.
but in relationships with people, I get joy. I mean, I get joy out of the conversations that we had. You offered me the chance to give you a perspective on what you had done without being offended by it. Those are
Oh, no.
joyful
I
things.
I loved the feedback because see, the thing I loved about it is that you were honest, you were there. Uh, you helped me tremendously. I couldn't
Excellent.
imagine anyone being offensive. However, you did share with me some people that you have helped that really took offense to it.
Yeah, it's so for me, the level of happiness in my life is always high. I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. I may not have thought I would be here, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago. I may not have thought I would have been in this situation, but making the most of it, enjoying it, and then being able to, in relationships with people. So when I'm with people, and I'll go back to the truth is, I'm actually very shy. And I have a friend once who diagnosed me, said, "You're very shy." He said, "But I want to be like you when you're in public." And it's interesting because I don't always get um, energized by public. I went to an event in Austin for venture capitalists.
Yes.
Not a single one of those people were my audience. Not a single one of those people I had anything in common with. And I had a great time because I got to speak to the entertainment. There was a magician there, and we became friends immediately because I've done magic. But I was able to present that, and people looking would say, "He's happy, he's joyful." But I wasn't engaged in a place where it was awkward. And I find my way to where my shyness doesn't matter. But with the VCs, I couldn't have a conversation with them other than small talk. And that's not my forte.
No, you literally get to know people, you build great relationships. So one of the things that I know about you though is you're very sharing. You give openly, you desire to give. So talk to us a little bit about how we can be better at that and gain influence with people around us.
One of the things in all of my presentations is I end with two words, which is in order to find our passion, our purpose, our calling, in order to give back to the world, we need two things. Now, it's bigger than that. This is a very quick summary of it, but it's awareness and action. And I learned many years ago that awareness is something that really helps guide you through life. So somebody told me that if you're aware of what the issue is with you, like a health issue, then that's the first step to solving a problem. And I think that in life, if you are aware of who you are and what's around you, at the hackathon, I had a young guy come up and say, ask me questions about what it was that I did. And he said something about, well, what do I do? And I talked about finding yourself, your true self, being true to you, being you. And he said, how do I find that? How do I find that myself? And that's awareness. You need introspection. You need to stop putting up walls in front of people to, project an image that's not you. You've got to find what is the real you. He said, I don't know what the real you is. Now, I do have a set of questions. I gave him my 24 questions to help understand who you are, what brings you joy, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, all of those kinds of things. And I'm waiting to hear back from him. But the interesting part is people go, if you ask me a question like, what brings you joy today? What brought you joy today? He said, there could be two answers. There could be two different things. I said, but that's correct. That is actually showing two sides of you. And often people go, no, I'm very linear. My worldview is this way. And you have to understand where you came from, what things that you read and consumed, and that makes you who you are. An awareness of that, which is often difficult to get, is that first step. The second part of it is then action. So I offer perspectives, and I've been calling myself the perspective catalyst because people come up and say, Trevor, you changed my life. And I would deny, say, no, it's you did it. And when enough people did it, I had to say thank you because they believed that I was the reason they changed their life. But I wasn't. I was the catalyst. They were the ones who did it. That, to me, bringing that perspective and offering that perspective often causes awareness and consternation. Sometimes I'll say something that'll poke an insecurity in somebody. And if they have the right attitude is, ooh, that made me uncomfortable. I better look at that and I better address that. And that helps you find out who you are if something makes you uncomfortable. I also get people who say, well, you just poked my insecurity. I'm going to blame you. And I don't know you, so I didn't do it purposely. But awareness of who you are, that helps then action. Go do something about it. And oftentimes we live in such a world, which is what we do is what we do. We live our world. We, go to the same places. We do the same things. We don't actually say, I'm going to do this in my life and I'm going to perform these actions. But it is a two-step process. You need awareness Now, this applies to anything, awareness around you, what's happening in the world. Being Australian, of Irish heritage, who grew up in the bush, moved to America, had to learn how to speak differently and how to respell. And now I'm in Canada, I'm learning to spell again. You know, I, I have this very, very unique perspective that oftentimes people don't see things the way I do. That doesn't mean they should, but if I offer something and they go, "Oh, that helps me learn more about myself," that I think is where there's huge value. And that's talking to anybody. I've coined a new phrase, which I just stole. It's an English word. But oftentimes you need someone from the outside to give you insight. And
Mm.
so I've been calling this outsight.
Outside.
And outside insight is outside. And outside is, when you and I have a conversation, I can learn from your perspectives, your outside insight on me, and then I can offer that as well. I just happen to be able to do that fairly well because I can read people fairly well and I can understand them and I pay attention mostly. uh, Mostly.
Well, did your street performance help you at all in reading people? What was it that literally allowed you to learn that skill? Because it's a great skill.
So I think I've always had. So when I first moved to Chicago, my landlord said to me, "Trevor, you can't be a computer programmer. You have a personality." And she said, "You must be right-brained and left-brained." And I didn't understand that, but I've been creative all my life. And I did art when I was a kid, and I did a bunch of different things that were very creative. And my dad was an engineer, had an engineering workshop in our yard, and we used to build stuff and make stuff. We built a motorcycle once, which was just so much fun for us. We had 26 acres. It was incredible. But I was always building. And then when I discovered, my mum said, "You're good with mathematics. You should go and become an accountant." And I got to college and there was this thing called data processing and, sorry, Australian data processing. So I found computers and my brain went, the brain and the fingers, and I can make this happen. And that was quite incredible. And then when I got to the chance where I started presenting, I was building slide decks that you had to and find creative ways to make them work. And so I've always had this creative bent and this computer weenie thing at the same time. And very few people in the worlds that I live in overlap like that. So I was a bit of an anomaly in there because I could see things differently and offer things differently, offer different outside. And so it just sort of continued standing in front of 40 people, entertaining them with silliness and stupid poetry and jokes and fun and play gave me permission to be myself. I'm in a costume, I'm playing someone else, gave me permission to be myself. And that's when I was able to come back and start on stage being a motivator and offering that perspective. Now, I don't I don't try and offer that to people unless we're having a conversation and it comes up. So it's not like I try and force it on anybody. It's got to be a two-way thing. So
Well, you have this school of dangerous ideas, and what makes an idea dangerous?
when we grow up, we put walls up. And a lot of our walls are to do with being appropriate. So I don't want to say something inappropriate to people in power or community or my parents. So I put up a wall to prevent myself from doing that. But as I grow, I start putting up a wall because my parents tell me who I am. And so I put up a wall that presents who
Mm.
they think I am. And I hide behind it. And then I do that for school and for church and for community and for college and workplace. And I have all of these walls. If I want to present my true self, I've got to break down some of those walls. A dangerous idea is an idea that's dangerous to our status quo. It's an idea, dangerous to who we've set up ourselves to be, and it will break down some of those walls. We often need to break down walls that we've put up to stop receiving information. We're not open to things, and we need to break down those walls and be more open to what's out there. I will say when I'm speaking that I may not have the same religious beliefs as you, but I want to understand yours, and I need to be open to that. And there's a wall there, and just saying I want to understand yours is a dangerous idea to a lot of people. So the School of Dangerous Ideas is to encourage you to find the ideas that break your walls down, that challenge your status quo. And we can be very corny in marketing and say you'll live a rich life. But what happens is you actually find that by being you and being true to you and opening up and getting rid of some of those walls with dangerous ideas, you live a very different life. And it shows who you really are, and you get to live who you are. No matter what end of life you believe in, we have just this one on this earth. And to live that fully, we should be ourselves. We shouldn't hide ourselves. And there are times when you need to protect yourself. And there are walls you don't want to break down. Like you don't want to go off to somebody who's important. And, here I am with Dianna, wonderful speaker, wonderful coach, and I'm swearing my face off at her. No, that's probably all I need to have. And there are times when you need them, but there are so many walls that we put up that we could break down.
I love that idea of breaking down the walls, because that gets us outside of our comfort zone. And yet, are you finding that there's many people out there, as I have, that sometimes their identity is what they do? When you say, "Who are you?" and they go, "I'm a CEO," or "I'm a coach," or "I'm a speaker," and they talk about what they do versus
Yep.
who they are. Do
Yep.
you help people with that?
So there's a couple of really good, dangerous questions that you can ask them. And that is, how do you feel about something? Tell me how you feel about something. And some of my, it was interesting because I have these book of 24 questions. I spent one writer's retreat in Austin writing 60 questions, and it just got out of hand. But these questions are, what brought you joy today? What made you laugh yesterday? What made you feel something yesterday?
That's
And you'll
good.
get people who'll say, a lot of times it's your kids, for example. I did a creativity class, and in class we had to write the top 10 things that bring us joy. And the idea was that if you have a list of things that bring you joy and you're having a struggle day, you can say, go to my list and indulge in one of those things. So my top thing was when my daughter said, "I love you," without any provocation, without any asking. When she just said that, that was my number one joy. But I couldn't have that on an instant. It had to come when it came. My second joy was a caramel macchiato from Starbucks. And I was having a couple of bad weeks, and I put on 20 pounds because I was having caramel. So
Okay,
I've gone to non-fat lattes now. I
now
mean,
you changed a little bit. Well, I
yeah,
know that the people listening to this, they're going to want those 24 questions. Do you have them on your website or somewhere that you share those with people?
I have somewhere that I share, and I will send that to you and you can post it. It's just a page that I use for the people who've attended my session. I have a session which is called "What the F Was I Meant to Do?" It's meant to be a little striking, but there's no swearing in it. But I have the 24 questions after that, and it's a PDF. And what I ask people to do is go through the 24, do a first pass and answer the short question, and then come back later and analyze it and build it longer. So there's a bit of spelling. I'll send you that link. It's on my page.
Oh, thank you so much. For people listening, and there's more inside of them. We both know that. There's more potentiality than most of us give ourselves credit for. And sometimes they're stuck in that old story. What would you say to someone right now that isn't enjoying the story that they're living in their life?
It goes back to Trevor, you changed my life. I have never been responsible for anybody changing their lives. Everybody who's said they changed their life did it on their own. I had a girl who said, I saw you 4 months ago. I was struggling through a divorce and I left after your session and I went home and I divorced him right away. And I went and started doing scuba lessons because I've always wanted to do that. And next week I'm flying to the Great Barrier Reef and I'm going to scuba on the Great Barrier Reef. She said, you changed my life. I didn't. She did all of that. We all have that power to make that difference ourselves. We've got to find the trigger. And that's the really difficult point. And the reason we don't find the trigger often is we're not thinking about it. We don't stop at any given, we just live our lives and we keep doing the things that we're doing. We don't pause for a moment. We don't have anything on our calendar that says, stop, pause, think, awareness, get some awareness. In other words, find out what it is that you like, write down. Some people have, gratitude lists that they write before they go to sleep. You could get up in the morning and write, these are the things I'd like to do today. Whether you do them or not, you're thinking about what your desires and your passions are. We've got to stop and pay attention to doing something like that actively. That's the action part. If we're not doing it actively, it's the cliche. If you've always done what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And you can fix that by making an effort, by setting it up so that you have time to do that, taking a break, going and sitting on your patio, going for a walk in nature. I have one of the things in my book is about sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, listening to the wind whistle through the pines, and there was nobody. What an amazing and incredible moment of introspection. And if you have that moment, take it or make it.
Yeah. When you speak, when you have one of your classes or one of your sessions, what is it that you want every person to leave with? If you could give them one gift, what would it be?
I want them to think differently than when they came in the door. So when I first started trying to market myself, I had a lady write some content for me. And she said, give me a bunch of people who've been to your sessions. And because it was a technical event that I mostly spoke at, people would come to my session because it was called Get a Life. They wouldn't read the abstract. They would come because it wasn't a technical session. It was generally at a different time so they could take a break. She called them and said, why did you go and what did you expect? Nobody could answer that. I just went. Now, as I got well known, people go, I heard Trevor was a good speaker, which I laugh and say, you're just sucking up to the speaker. But ultimately, people didn't know why they came, but every single one said they left with a different perspective. That's what I would like. I would like them to see the world slightly different because at the beginning of my sessions, I say when we cross paths with people in our lives, sometimes there's a cliche, a season or a reason. Well, maybe when we cross paths, sometimes we just keep walking. Other times we walk together for a little while. Some of us walk together for a long time. But when you cross paths, you will see and encounter something different than you've ever expected in your life. If it's something you've already done, already encountered, you'll just ignore it. But there are people in your life who, when you cross paths with them, when you encounter them, they have an impact on your life, one way or another. I'd like to be that. In reality, I'm going to get a few people out of every 100 that I serve. I want all 100 to go away thinking differently, even if they were angry at me for something I said that poked their insecurities. I want them to think differently. However, what I really enjoy is that one or two people who came up and said, you made me think differently, and now I am thinking differently. That's what I would really like. Now, thinking differently doesn't mean go away and do something bad.
Yeah.
Don't misinterpret dangerous ideas. Don't be destructive, be dangerous to your own status quo. That's the challenge I would ask people.
Well, I do know some of the folks listening to this, they're going to want to know about your speaking, where they could when they can hire you, your fees, the classes that you give, where would they contact you at?
So they can start at trevorperry.com. And from there, there are two paths. One is into my speaking and what I offer with primarily my keynotes. And as I've grown up in the speaking industry, I think I probably have about 43 different keynotes, because that's what you do when somebody says, well, can you speak? And you go, yes. My signature keynote is called Be the Star That You Are. And it was very interesting that I did this in Fort Worth for a group I'd been involved with for 25 years. I went away for a couple, came back, and the executive said, I just knew you were popular, so I hired you, but I didn't know you were that good and have that much of an impact. So that's what I sort of like with Be the Star That You Are. It's the conglomeration, it's the accumulation of all that I've done, which is then what the School of Dangerous Ideas is, which is I can do workshops for people on that. We can do retreats, and simple things. So one of the things, being in a tech world for a long time, I have companies who are in the software or the technology industry who ask me and hire me to write stories for them. I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to teach them storytelling and slidecraft and stagecraft. And one of my customers says, no, we want you to write the stories. That is an amazing thing, but I love to teach people. I would much rather show them how they can tell stories that connect with their audiences, and how they can tell stories that have a personal aspect in them that isn't whiny, doesn't have a moral, but really helps them connect with their audiences in describing what it is that they do. So those are dangerous ideas as well. And when you have a bunch of pre-sales people actually having to tell a story that connects them, that's dangerous. And it's so joyful to see them grow. So all of those things.
You have so many great words like stagecraft, dangerous ideas. You put things together that most people wouldn't even think about. And as we close up here, I'd like to know, what's a question that you wish I would have asked you that I failed to ask?
What brings me joy?
There you go. Well, let's go there then.
So I would probably put the thing that brings me joy the most in my life is my daughter. She was 13 and moved from a business school to a school that was very arty, and she never, ever got anything but an A beyond that from, I think, year 10, 9, something forward. She was then recruited by NYU for their film studies uh, undergraduate program, and focused on screenwriting. She then did 2 years of screenwriting at USC, and she is currently writing a movie. It's all her own. She has a director established that Amazon is producing.
Oh, my
And
word.
she has stuck with this. And every time I talk about finding your passion and following it, she is my example, and she brings me joy. And, we tease each other. We're best of friends. We get along really well. But that's the number one thing that brings me joy. And it inspires me to know that I have that as an example in my life that I can basically use to go out and motivate people. So that's my number one.
You know what? I love that you're kids, because I think family's so important. And so once again, please share with the people where they would go to find you, if you're on social media or your website, whatever you'd like to do to promote.
Today, it's trevorperry.com. And you can find both my School of Dangerous Ideas and my speaking on there. I am more active on LinkedIn. I've started a newsletter that I said once a week, but occasionally I miss a week, but I'm having so much fun with that. And that's on LinkedIn .com/in/Trevor Perry. That's easy to find me. I'm the guy who has the crazy glasses and the finger pointing. So those are my pictures, and you'll see those. I have Instagram, and I was doing a lot of silliness on there, and I haven't worked out how to start that back up again. But I was posting a picture of clouds once a week. I was posting a joke once a week, and I've sort of slowed that down, but I will pick that back up, and it will get back onto Instagram. That's under Trevor CXO for Chief Extraordinary Officer, CXO. So,
I love that. Now, here's the picture because I had to look at it as you were talking about that. The crazy glasses, the finger pointing, and
yep.
I love the things that you said, School of Dangerous Ideas. Trevor Perry, for those of you who are interested, go check him out. Trevor, I have loved meeting you, and I'm so happy that you've been on the podcast today to help others become more. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, hit the subscription button below and be certain and catch us next week on Becoming More. Thanks so much.
Thank
See
you.
you.